Welcome to my weekly review. Today is Saturday, December 14th. We survived Friday the 13th without too many casualties, I suspect. Anyway, you're looking at a daily chart of the Nasdaq, which was up 24 points or 0.12% and closed at 19,927. We'll call it on Friday. The volume on Friday was 9% below the 50-day average. We did see a couple distribution days last week. But anyway, the Nasdaq has become the leading index as the Dow Jones Industrial Average has fallen back and the SPY kind of limping along, and the Russell 2000 is and kind of hurting right now. But definitely the leading index last week made that new high of 20,061 and then quickly rejected. I got to go back to the daily chart there. There's your weekly. Whoops. Excuse me. While I was on the weekly, sorry about that. It was up a 67 points or 0.34%, a third of a percent, with 8% above the average weekly volume. So I wanted to go back to the daily chart and just show that how when it got here above the 6.5% above the 50, it pulled back. And it did that again here, right? 6.2%, then it pulled back a couple days to the 10, the 5, which is the green line. Then it rallied up on Wednesday, a nice move, 347 points, got 6.5% above the 50, and then pulled back on ever so slightly on Thursday, 132 points or 2/3 of a percent. Got below that 6% above the 50. Then on Friday, I wouldn't call it a rally. It was up slightly, and now it's 5.5% above the 50, which is this rising red line. So anytime it gets above the 6, it's becomes a more riskier move to buy stocks. It's pretty hard to buy stocks when it's at that level. Let it come in a little bit. In fact, when it gets above 6, you'd probably be some trimming some and wait for the pullback to buy. Anyway, I did mention this SPY, and it's just kind of limping along down the last couple of days. It's still well above that 6,000 level here. We got a 3 weeks tight pattern on the SPY. I might as well go to the S&P 500 index and not the exchange traded fund. There you can see on the weekly, it was only down 39 points, closed at 6,051. So comfortably closing now above 6,000. So we like that. It hit it and then got rejected, pulled back to the 21 and then rallied through it. And now that I think that 6,000, which was once, resistance, is now becoming support or a floor for that index. I mentioned the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Yeah, it was down, I don't know, 6, 7 days in a row, just limping along. It hit that 45,000 and rejected like Matambo, hit it like a wall. It'll be back. It's just, some selling here, obviously. But the selling starting to subside as you see the volume here breaking down here. And the last one I mentioned was the IWM, which is kind of doing what the Dow Jones is doing, but now it's below the 21, only 1.5% above this rising 50. So Nasdaq is a leader. I don't trade indexes, but I do like the tailwinds from the index to buy, my stocks. And so we saw last week a rotation into the Mag 7. I'm going to go through the Mag 7, then I'm going to do some of the earnings last week. But we definitely had a rotation out of software, which is strong the prior week. And then last week we saw like a flight to safety in the Magnificent Seven stocks, Apple being one of them. Anytime the largest stock in the market is making new highs and breaking out of a base, that can't be bearish. Hit 250, right? 250.80, and then pulled back slightly, 71% of its weekly range. And so, yeah, like I said, when the largest stock in the market's making new highs, that can't be too bearish. Another Magnificent Seven stock, Tesla, was up 12% last week, making new highs, broke above that old, well, first of all, it went through 400 like poop through a goose. And then it got to this 1450, which was the prior high back from, the fall of 2021. So it's been more than 3 years of this base. And it went through that, surprisingly easily. And then closed Friday. You can see that big hammer candle on the weekly. Closed Friday at 100% of its weekly range. So that kind of bodes well for next week, I think. I think it's going higher. I don't say that just flippantly, it's because, it's got momentum. And people had no trouble, paying 400 for it or paying 414.50 or now paying 435. So Tesla, definitely one of the stronger Magnificent Seven names. Alphabet too. It broke out of this base on Wednesday. Made a nice move after they announced what was it, the Willow quantum computing chip. And what is this? Yeah, it's up nearly 9% last week. So once again, a stock with a 2 trillion market cap, going up 8%. This is not bearish, breaking out of bases. Microsoft is another one I kind of like. This is, you can see the consolidation on the weekly, but I think on the daily, there's, definitely some areas of interest here in Microsoft, breaking above this downtrending line here. I think it was 2 weeks ago and then followed through last week. So yeah, Microsoft definitely, I think, is actionable here. It was up slightly last week. What did I say the Nasdaq was up? Geez, Marty, I'm losing it. Oh yeah, it was up a third of a percent. So if your stocks went up, 0.5% or 1% last week, that's kind of normal. If they fell, then they're kind of showing, relative weakness. All right, Amazon is another one in this group, just showing strength. Made a new high last week. That was really powerful the prior week after the Salesforce earnings report. And then followed through last week with a new high of 231.20, closed at 47% of its weekly range. That one looks good. Meta Platforms, one of the last of the Mag 7. There you can see it broke out of that little flat base pattern with that 602.95 standard buy point. I thought it would pull back to that area, but it hasn't. It just closing a tick below its 5 there. It's 620.35 on Friday. And the last one is NVDA. This is kind of the weaker one of the index. And I know people will point to, this little head and shoulders pattern here, with the shoulders kind of being a Gumby shoulder here, starting to limp along below the 50. That one does look vulnerable because it is a late stage base. Here you can see all the bases along the way. This is yeah, but that doesn't mean it's going to fail just because it's late stage. But it was down nearly 6% last week after the earnings report from Broadcom. It got hit too for good reason. All right, I'm going to go through some of the earnings reports last week. Salesforce was the boost for the software names 2 weeks ago. Last week, Oracle was kind of the bust. We had the boom and the bust from this name. Actually, the report wasn't that bad. It just wasn't well received by Wall Street, that's for sure. And it sliced its 50. AI had a wild move on earnings. You can see this big bar here. If I go to like a 10-minute chart, you can see this one. Yeah, this big move. Whoop, down, okey doke. And then somebody came in and bought, then it ended like flat on the day and just kind of like flat the rest of the week. Anyway, that was AI, and which is showing a little better sales here, accelerating sales. The one that got hammered after the report on Monday was MDB, MongoDB computer database. So the software, Oracle and MDB kind of put a kibosh on that software group. All right. Another earnings report we had last week was Toll Brothers, and these home builders are in a world of hurt. I'm going to get to that later, so I'm not going to spend any time on that. AZO, AutoZone, the auto, repair automotive parts stock reported and made a nice move last week. It was up nearly 2%. Broke out of that base there 2 weeks ago and followed through last week. So that looks good. ASO Academy Sports. You can see it's kind of been in decline here. See what it looks like on the daily. Yeah. And I think that kind of made a bottom there. That 45 was retested at 44.73, and now it's starting to rally back through its moving averages. It was rejected at its 200, so that's providing resistance for now. But we'll see if ASO can blast through there in the coming sessions. It was up nearly 8% last week, so good week for ASO. OLLI had a fantastic move after its report. You can see the breakout from the base here, and this is what you want to see on an earnings report, like an 11% move last week. There you can see the gap higher, and then didn't give back its gains, just kind of waiting for the 5 to catch up with it. So OLLI looks good to me. UNFI, another one of these one that blasted out of a base. This is a food company. UNFI, if I could type properly. Yeah, gap tire pullback, got below that gap day, which I don't like, but still, all it really did was pull back to its 5, and then found support there on Friday. But I mean, when you make a 20% move, you got to expect some kind of give back. They're not always going to follow through. But for the week, you can see this thing broke out up 18% last week. We'll take that. All right. GIII, just showing this because the retail sales have been strong, but it's really hit and miss in this department. And you can see this one's up near it's too extended now, but it is up near that standard buy point. I mean, it made a 15% move last week. So it's 12.2% above the 21. So let that thing catch up a little bit. But that's what we want to see. And what we don't want to see is what Adobe did. And this thing's been a serial gapper to the downside here. This thing just bugs me when it starts doing stuff like this every time. I mean, geez, come on, Adobe, get it together. Anyway, haircut last week of 16%, well deserved. All right, let's move on to the Love Shack. This one down 31% last week. Not a good response to their earnings report. We'll see if it can get support at the 200, but that one's out of love. LQDT, this is liquidity services, online, internet, retail internet. Professional buyers and sellers had a nice move on Thursday. Following its earnings report, you can see that gap higher, 31%, followed through on Friday. So for the week, yeah, nice 44% move. That is not to be ignored, Dan. All right, and then of course, Broadcom, which is the one that sparked a rally Friday in the semiconductor space for good reason. I don't want to get too technical with all the, get lost in the weeds with the details. Guidance is everything, and they're guiding way higher. And they painted a rosy picture for AI. Whether it comes to fruition or not, we'll see. But the CEO certainly was, painting a very sanguine picture for AI going forward. And so it really sparked a rally in some of the other names, which I'll get to in a minute. But it was up 24% on Friday, breaking out of that double bottom base. That's classic standard action. You can see this here. There's your double bottom. Had this little consolidation for quite some time. What was that? 16 weeks, 4 months essentially. Then made that little double bottom or a handle and then rallied, man, 25% last week. So good on the Broadcom shareholders. I don't know Broadcom, but I got some pen action. Wow, Costco's over 1,000, closed below it yesterday. Boohoo. And last week it was down 1/3%. Yeah, just pulled back to its 21. So let's watch that stock next week and see if that 1,000 psychological level becomes resistance or if it can blast through it like poop through a goose. All right. RH, this guy, the CEO is kind of bombastic. He said this is the worst housing market he's ever seen. And he kind of, makes these outlandish comments, but you can see his earnings line or the earnings line heading north. And now the stock popped, 19% last week. So it's all about the price action and not what the CEO says. But anyway, I'm going to get to housing later. I'm going to go to some leaders now. And I mentioned the pen action from the earnings report from Broadcom, and ALAB certainly has it. And I know a lot of people are talking about this thing's topped. It's too extended. And you know what? It's probably because they're not in it and they want to buy it. But leading stocks, they're hard to buy, and they're not going to let you. They're not just going to pull back and let you in. This thing, after it broke out of this IPO base, see, it had this IPO pattern, and it pulled back this 1 week, and that was a chance. It was made that low at 85 after it broke out here, and it's been up 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks in a row. Last week was up nearly 10%, and it's just been going up every week. The prior week was 17%. And then, kind of a flat week, and then 18%. So this has been really, a monster stock, and it has this clear pattern here where it pulls back to a moving average and ramps higher, then it pulls back, ramps higher, pulls back. This one gapped higher. This is why we pay attention to gaps. Pull back to the 5, gapped higher. Now it's mining the 5, right? It was mining the 21. Now every time it pulls back to the 5, it just blasts higher. So, you can buy it off the 5, but I'd wait for a bounce. And this thing it could just rip to 160 by the end of the year. That wouldn't surprise me. In fact, I halfway expect it. And anyway, that's it for ALAB. Just a nice leading stock. This is why I like following IPOs because you never know that every winning stock, every monster stock, Cisco, Yahoo, all the Qualcomms, they were all IPOs at one point. Meta, Google, and if you paid attention to them at the beginning, you could become they can become profitable for your account. How about that? All right, another one in this group is MRVL. They announced earnings and then blasted higher. It was only up 6.5% last week, huh? Yeah, well, it pulled back. I see it pulled back to its this is the earnings blast higher, pull back to the 5, then went higher on Broadcom's earnings. So MRVL looks fantastic. And the last one I'm going to show in this group, I'm not going to go through AMD and all the rest of them. I'm just going to go to the leaders that I like, and this one I like above this high here. It had a gap day, then followed through the next day, and then pulled back to its 5. That high is 75.30. So anything above that, I kind of like this stock, and that 5 is moving quickly higher. All right, that's it for that group. I've got to get to the software names because I mentioned the Salesforce earnings report. And that sparked a rally. The 2 weeks ago. And this thing had been rallying for a while. And I know a lot of people say it was a sell because it was 100% above its 200 right there on November 7th. And it just kept going higher and higher. So if you use that rule to sell, with like 250 here, you missed a big move up to, 420. And no 420 jokes. And then it pulled back last week when it wasn't included in the S&P, but I don't think that's the reason. It doesn't need a reason. It's just, it's a high flyer. There's going to be some profit taking. All it did last week was pull back to its 21 right here. And so that stock was, for me, it's an avoid, but I know it's still in an uptrend. And a lot of people like it, and it's probably going to find support at its 21, and it's probably going to trade higher, but it's going to do it without moi. ServiceNow is another one of these leaders in the software group. Had been minding its 5 on Friday. It pulled back more than 2% and sliced its 5, but as long as it's above the 21, it looks good and trending higher. I did mention ServiceNow, excuse me, Salesforce. Benioff, had this big move on earnings and just pulled back to the 5 last week. So these last 5 days just holding its gains. It is below of the low of the gap day, but it's above the 5 here, and it looks healthy. Some other stocks that sold off last week as we saw that rotation, right? Constant rotation in this market, rotation into software, and then rotation last week out of software and into the mega cap tech stocks. So that's just the name of the game, and it's going to rotate somewhere else, I'm sure soon. Could be as soon as Monday. So don't get too complacent. This is Datadog, had that nice rip after the Salesforce report, and then sold off last week. Let's see how bad the damage was. Yeah, nearly 10% move on Datadog. That's tough to take. But that's the rotation. That's what's going on in this market. Palantir was announced Friday evening that it will be joining the Nasdaq 100. I think it was kind of expected. Well, it was way expected, but it was just flat last week. And I don't know how much of a boost that will be, but it's certainly riding the 5 right here on the daily chart, like Kelly Slater, man. It's just surfing, hanging 10, or actually hanging 5. MicroStrategy had that massive move. This thing's up more than 500% this year. And ran up to 543, then just pulled back to the 21. 21's been support. This also was announced that it's joining the Nasdaq 100, the QQQs, and so we'll just see how it responds next week. This one I think might get a little more juice than Palantir because it was a little more of a surprise, not quite as anticipated. It was up in the air, a coin flip, and so with MicroStrategy going in, this is certainly a Bitcoin play. And if you like flags, I know people like the high tight flag stuff. This one's definitely, and you could say this is nothing tight about it, but it is flagging after this, breakout from the base here. So let's take a look at that on the weekly. It is a weekly review. There you go. And then there's your flag. So yeah, I still like MicroStrategy. I mean, I'd rather be in that one than app loving right now. Anyway, that's just me, just me. GoDaddy, another one that I like. It was had trouble at 200. See, it bumped its head against 200 a couple times. That provided resistance, and once it popped through, now it's providing support as it traded down there a couple times and then found support and bounced, but really it's just surfing off its five there. Yeah, a couple of days where it pulled back. I like this stock a lot. I think it's going higher. Just follow the 21. As long as it's above the 21 and the 21's rising, yeah, that stock's going to go higher. RBRK, this is another one of these new names, IPOs that I'm watching here. Yeah, I just, would like to like to monitor these. Made this high on gap day and the low was 62.06 and it kept making higher lows as you can see all week. Friday undercut the 70 just by a whisker, 69.68, and it just pulled back to its five and then bounced. If you look at the 5-minute chart, you can see that right here, it pulled back. This is the 70 level and then ran the rest of the day into the close. So I kind of like this name. As long as it's staying above the five's trending higher, the stock's going higher. All right, I'm going to go to my favorite group, which is retail, because it's simple and easy. This is Walmart. This is huge retailer making new highs. I mean, there's nothing, bearish about this. Made a new high of 96.18 on the week of, December 6th. Last week pulled back 1.5%. But probably rotation coming into these retail names, and that will get some love again. Decker is another chart that I like a lot. You can see it broke out of this cup with handle pattern. It's just been up on lighter volume. It just quietly grinds higher. This one marches to the beat of its own drum. And if you own it, this is one that I don't watch every day. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's just in my retirement account, and I'm just, yeah, it's just because it's been one of the big winners of this century. There you take a look at it from what is it like 20 cents up to 200, so you do the math there. Big winner for Deckers. Bros is another one that I like. Sliced its five kind of harshly last week, pulled back to the 21. Did not like that action, but still, above the 21. Yeah, 6% move. If I can't tolerate that kind of stuff. Anyway, if it finds support and bounces, maybe take another swing at that thing. And then EAT was downgraded last week, and then it, dropped to its 21, found support. The five starting to, curl sideways to down here, so I don't like that. Maybe that's the end of the move from like 73 to 133. That's a hell of a move. Anyway, that's it for well, maybe I'll show this one. Kava was one that I like, but this one gave up the ghost last week. When they make a move like that vertical violation of that 50 with the heavy volume, it's adios muchachos. So anyway, it's been a big winner, but now it's time to say goodbye. It broke out of that IPO base here and kind of ran. It looks a little bit like Astera Labs, the ALAB, just made this big move, several pullbacks, made that big charge on earnings at 172.43, and that's it for that. All right. I'm going to go to the internet stocks because I'm talking about leaders and I got to go to Reddit because Tesla and ALAB and Reddit and CRDO, those ones are just Apple. I mean, those ones are making new highs and looking strong. This one last week was up 6%. We'll take that. You can see it gapped out of a base here. This is why we pay attention to gaps, because when it gapped out of that base, that was back in November 1st. Okay. Yeah, it was 79 or whatever. And this one just blasted higher. So if you paid attention, 79 to 120, now it's at 172. And I know a lot of people saying just like ALAB, it's extended, it can't go any higher. Well, just when you think it can't go any higher, probably does. It's just surfing its five here. And just like ALAB, it's got the same pattern where it pulls back and then rises. It pulls back to the five and rises. It's the same pattern. This one's a nice spike. And then the sell. There was some selling from Tencent and Condé Nast sold some of the stock, but that's going to happen when yeah, management owns 19% of the stock, so there'll probably be some selling along the way. But somebody's buying this, the institutions, and it's not Aunt Sally, okay? So Reddit's just a big winner. Dash, got to show this one because stock that I like, big monster move here out of this cup with handle. Yeah, it's been down the last couple of weeks, but just minimal damage. And if we look at it on the daily, yeah, just pull back to the 21. That one looks fine. And then SE is another one that I like because it's just kind of marking time here, forming a shelf. And if I go to the weekly chart here, you can see that shelf pattern here. It looks like it's like 4 or 5 weeks tight in here, but yeah, doing nothing wrong there. I like SE a lot. I know a lot of people are saying that there's no stock setting up and everything's extended, but there's stuff like this that looks pretty good to me. All right, and the last group, I might lie there, but one of the groups that I like to follow, really disappointed with is it's just a rotation out of these names. It made this high at 168. And I thought for sure it was going to get some love here as we head into the year end, and it still might. But it formed this little flag pattern, just fell out. It had a 3 weeks tight pattern heading into this week, and thought after the 3 weeks tight, it's going to be an add-on buy point, and it wasn't to be. This thing was down nearly 10% last week. But I'm still looking for these stocks to get some love at some point. There's going to be a rotation. It's not a matter of if, it's when these guys get some love. GEV made a big announcement last week with a $6 billion stock buyback program and dividend. They have a dividend now. And anyway, this is kind of pinching in here. So give it some more time. It's had a big move, down 4% on that news last week. So it's just, they're just selling them, just moving money into other areas. That's all. TLN. There's another one in this group, pulled back last week more than 6%. So this group was just out of favor. These energy data center plays, VRT down 6% last week. Another one that at some point, they're going to come in and start rotating into that group. And this is my last group. The financials, SoFi has been doing really well. Made this big move, pull back to its 21 and just marking time here. It looks like a little 3 weeks tighter shelf pattern here. Yeah, that's not bad after that breakout. Morgan Stanley, it's kind of the same thing, wedging back to its moving averages. So that's what you kind of like to see, this big move on big volume, right? And then wedging back to, on lighter volume down here, wedging back to moving average. So that looks pretty good to me. And then a firm, this is not a bank, but it is a finance credit card, payment group. Made the big move out of the base, and then now it's marking time, forming that little shelf pattern. So that one looks good as well. There's all look like they're like 3 or 4 weeks tight, but they're just not tight enough. So, yeah, there's some attractive stuff out there, I still think. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you for watching. Except for I've got to go through one more, a couple more deals that I got to get to because I see a lot of people, that are saying that the Nasdaq's frothy and it's toppy. But I went through the exercise last couple of weeks. I've been doing it for the folks at mcstockcharts.com. And after an election, the in this century, the average gain has been 21% and has ranged from like 16 to 30%. And so a move like this is normal. And I expect more actually from the Nasdaq. That doesn't mean all stocks are going to go up. I mean, you saw how the leadership narrowed, but this is only up 8% since the election. All right. And I just said the average is 21, and we've seen what is it, 16 after Bush, and then 17 after Obama, and 18 or 19 after Trump, and then 30% after Biden in 2020. And so The relief rally is normal. This is normal action. This is normal. And I'm not going to go through all the charts and go backdate all this stuff because I've done it before and you can look at my prior videos. But yeah, I still say there's more in this move here. This rally is normal. It's not, I don't think it's frothy. And anyway, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Yeah, the rally from here is a little, long in the tooth, but post-election, I expect more. That's all. And anyway, I've got to go to the home builders because these guys are looking bad. I'm a little worried about the home builders for the next in 2025. With, I don't know, all the logistics going on with it. This is definitely an avoid group. Lennar, these things are rolling over. I don't think it's very healthy uh, for the overall market, but I mean, there's got to be rotation out of something to go into something else. And money's got to go somewhere. And so these ones have been hammered. Pulte Homes, they all look the same profile, just getting smashed. Taylor Morrison, same thing. So yeah, it looks bad. And they're definitely heading one way. And I'm not going to end this weekly video on a down note because I've got a couple of things. One is the Novo Nordisk deal. Dr. No finally said yes. Unbelievable. That news, I read it this morning. It might have came out last night, but the European Union approved the Catalent Novo Nordisk deal on December 6th. And then the FTC approved the deal on Friday night or Saturday morning. But Novo Catalent deal, this is a big deal. And people are asking me, is it going to go back to 100? It definitely, pulled back to 99 here. And that was a low. I don't know if that's the low. It could certainly, pull back to 100 once again. There it is, 99.42. Had this big move lower on Friday. It could pull back. It's just a chip shot away from that 100 to retest that level, but Novo buying Catalent allows the manufacturing of their GLP-1 drugs, which has been in as a supply strain area, which has allowed him and hers to have these compounders on the market. So I'm not saying it's going to happen right away, but by 2026, this manufacturing plant's going to be cranking all sorts of drugs, and Novo is going to benefit from this. They're going to be making drugs for other companies. They're going to be a big manufacturer, not just the GLP-1 drugs. But him and hers, I think it's about 10% of their revenue from the GLP-1 drugs. And if the FDA take that off the market, that's going to hurt this company. You see, made a high of 35. Like I say, it's good for a trade, but longer term, I think these bigger fish, the sharks, are going to kind of swallow them. And anyway, that's not it for me because I have one more thing. Good for Novo shareholders, I think, longer term. Anyway, we had an IPO last week to keep on my radar, and this is a Service Titan TTAN. Yet went from 100 to 105 on the IPO day, which is Thursday, then pulled back to 95. I'm just going to watch this one, put it in the watch list, the IPO watch list for 2024. We've had some winners. I've showed you them earlier. AS was one of them. ALAB is another one. Reddit is another one. 2024 has been a good year. GEV. So yeah. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you for watching at mcstockcharts.com. We never give up.